Hey everybody, this is Zachary Kovich. You probably know that already, but I'm here to give you a brief introduction to permaculture and how it's often applied. Um, just a short video. I guess the first thing to note is permaculture is much more than the sum of its parts. So it's often really hard to define and goes beyond any sort of definition that one can place on it. It's better understood as an orientation or a posture that one takes, one that's um, a posture that's very cutting edge, a way of knowing that's very new and exciting, but also one that's very ancient and kind of, in my opinion, just inherently within us as human animals, but one that we've gotten away from. Permaculture is a process of humans re-entering and taking up our agency in a song that's always being sung by the wild world, the natural world around us. So, a little more concretely, permaculture asks the question, how can we create human habitats where the needs and desires of the human community are met through tending the needs and desires of the ecosystem? Permaculture is governed by three ethics. The first one is earth care, recognizing that the earth is a living, breathing entity, and that is our first goal as humans, to facilitate care and nurturing of this home of ours, because the consequences could be horrendous, and we're already seeing the beginning of what could be the norm. People care is the second ethic, which is a little more understood, beginning with ourselves and going outward to our family, our community, the world, all of humanity. This principle recognizes how compassion and collaboration on the human end will lead to a sustaining future for the world and for the body politic. Ethic 3 requires a little more explanation. You kind of have to feel your way through this one and see how it speaks to you, but it's often called fair share, with the subtitle to set limits and redistribute the surplus. One of my permaculture courses, we spent pretty much a whole day on this ethic of fair share and discussing in detail the idea of enough, and just the fact that we are rarely taught, if ever, growing up, what enough actually is. So this ethic notices our culture's demand for more. It notices our insatiable desire for limitless growth, and articulates it well and simply, the need for balance, the need for redistribution, the need for training in enough. So these three ethics form the foundation of permaculture, from which flow the 12 or so, depending on who you ask, principles of permaculture. In the words of permaculture co-founder David Holmgren, quote, each principle can be thought of as a door that opens into whole systems thinking, providing a different perspective that can be understood at varying levels of depth and application, unquote. The principles allow us to creatively redesign our landscapes and our behaviors. And to me, I think systems thinking is probably the bedrock of permaculture and permaculture design. Seeing the consequences of Western linear reductionistic thinking and promoting a more holistic, connections-driven lens focused on interconnected relationships, living relationships between any and all parts of a system, of an ecosystem. permaculture design begins with thoughtful and protracted observation. That's the first principle, is observe and interact. So one cannot know how best to engage a landscape for its flourishing without knowing and investing in listening to its needs, and by seeing, by being witness to the patterns that are already inherently in it. So the first principle, observe and interact. Other principles are catch and store energy, obtain a yield, design from patterns to details. So seeing things like stepping back, seeing the big picture, how is energy flowing through a particular landscape, how best to facilitate where the pattern leads to growth, and how best to, focus on patterns down to details, details meaning what plant would facilitate this need that needs to happen here. So other principles, use slow and small solutions, and one of my favorites, use edges and value the marginal. And as you can begin to see, these handful of the many principles of permaculture can be applied to other things besides a landscape design. So permaculture, it's key to understand that it's not just gardening and farming. It is much more comprehensive, and also it can also be applied to community design, invisible structures, and so forth. So I think I'll end there. Just a brief snippet into the permaculture world, and I would love to talk more for those of you interested in hearing more. I posted a couple videos down under my kind of description, and also a website. So there's some tools for you to start educating yourself. But this is a beautiful thing, and I really appreciate you clicking on this video and considering donating to furthering my education in this. So thank you. Blessings.